All right. I got my coffee here, and I think we are pretty much ready to go here. Welcome to everyone in the YouTube universe. And, of course, welcome back to our very special guest, Mr. Speed of Sound, sir. How are you?
Hold on.
Oh, sure. Oh, hold on. My goodness. Okay, we'll hold on for you.
I'm good, except I've got some noise going on here.
Oh, some noise. What type of noise is that? I'm sorry.
Goodness, I had you on two different screens.
That'll do it.
I was getting you double.
That'll do it.
I don't want two of you. For God, I can't handle one.
Fair enough. Isn't this an amazing pursuit for all of us learning about the streaming software? I feel kind of like a little bit like an old man, you know, like when I was a kid and I got a computer and my parents and grandparents had no clue about the computer and I felt like a whiz. I feel like that today because I see all these people running around and using the stream software and video editing. I'm like, oh, how did they do that?
Yeah, when I was a kid, I got like an erector set, and it's like, wow, what the hell is this?
Right. Outstanding. Well, it is a pleasure to welcome you back again, sir. Would you like to, of course, feel free to go ahead and announce yourself, a little info on your channel. Of course, your stuff is in the description below, but feel free to let the people know a little bit about you.
Okay, Speed of Sound is what I like. Speed of Sound of Gravity is the channel name I'm stuck with. In order to find it, I kind of pulled that out of the air in about I give that about 3 seconds of thought.
Beautiful.
Because every time I came up with Speed of Sound, I'd end up with John Prine's song or Alabama 3 or A3, the band. They have a song. Have you heard that song?
No, I don't. Well, you know what? If I heard it, I might recognize it because I don't know the names of songs very well at all. People say, "Have you heard this song?" And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And then they play it. And I'm like, oh yeah, I know what that is.
Right. It's a pretty good song. Anyway, so I have a channel, and I'm working on trying to learn how to put out YouTube content that might be interesting. For now, my channel is just absolute crap. Don't go there. I have something called the Weather Report.
Careful with that because we have our conversation on there too, so it can't be complete.
Oh, okay. Right? Well, yeah, yeah. There are some highlights. So
beautiful.
Anyway, it's pretty bad. I'm working on it. Anyway, that's it.
Well, no, that's great, and you're putting some work into it, and that's all we can do, right? You know,
Right.
that's we just have to keep plugging away. Well, it is a pleasure to welcome you back, and we were going to discuss a little bit more in depth. I don't know if this was really more of a continuation of kind of our last talk, or kind of more of a fresh thing, but I figured I'd kind of just let you, you know, kind of pose, take the reins. I mean, if you kind of want to think of it as like an opening, or just kind of presenting some of your ideas, certainly feel free, and we can take it from there if you like.
Yeah, I think we ought to get to know each other,
Sure.
and so I guess get at what are the reasons we believe what we believe. There were some concerning things. Oh, were you on Sal Cordova's thing last night in the chat? Did you?
I think so. I think I was. I stopped in for a little bit, and then I conked out while I was listening. Wait, was it Sal? I think it was Sal. It was Sal and Maddox, wasn't it?
Yeah, Sal and Maddox.
Yeah, no, then I was. Yeah, I popped in for a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I was supposed to. Sal wanted me to be on there, but John is still mad at me, and I thanked him for linking those papers, and because he finally linked those papers, but he's still mad at me, and I thought by now we'd be like in the backyard barbecuing, kids would be in the pool, we'd be hoisting beers and high-fiving, you know. But no, the man is still mad at me. Anyway, I was there, and let's see. One of the concerns I had was that little conversation you had with Immutable.
Sure.
And then in the comments, you know, this talk about how we just don't want to believe, I think
Well, that's a real oversimplification. Yeah, let me elaborate a little bit on where I was really coming from. And I think even Immutable kind of misunderstood a little bit of where I was coming from, which is why, and we actually had a Discord chat afterwards to kind of clear the air a little bit, so he kind of knew exactly where my stance was. This is kind of what I look at it as. If you are, and this is just a very, very general scope, and I'm trying to keep it simple, okay?
Okay.
On a very, very generalized level, the odds are against naturalism. Like the odds of naturalism being true, that there is essentially no mind whatsoever, no rules, just randomness and chaos beyond all this order that we have here. If you want to take that as your stance, in my personal opinion, you're believing that against the odds. Now, what would be a reason to want to believe something against odds? And the only rationalization I can come to is that belief is actually structured, interconnected with lots of other beliefs, some of which are, and I believe this to be true, unless, you know, someone certainly wants to pitch a case otherwise, a lot of these interconnecting appendages of this belief set in this network are falsification of various gods. Like, I mean, most atheists know Islam is nonsense, Christianity is nonsense, Hinduism is not, you know, they know all these things. Well, how do they know all these things? I don't believe it's because they're just so convinced naturalism is such a good explanation. I have to figure that there's something else in the interconnected belief network that isn't just strictly, I think this is truly the best explanation for all of reality. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense but you understand that you've just described a belief of your own about another.
Sure.
You have
that's all we ever can do. That's all we ever can do. I mean, we can't, I mean, it doesn't do us a lot of good to try and defend or propose beliefs we don't have.
But
this is what stands to me. I mean, I'm willing to hear logical arguments to the contrary, but this is how it stands to me right now.
Yeah, in addition, you're having a belief about others. Yeah, and what they believe. So you're having a secondary belief and a tertiary belief, you know,
sure.
belief about what others believe.
Well, do you believe I'm believing that with absolutely no evidence, that I'm just creating this in a vacuum?
I think you probably know a lot of atheists, and for a lot of atheists, I think, you know, you may have a point. But
well, that's just what I mean, you know, in no way, shape, or form is anything I say meant to be strictly generality. You understand that, right? I mean, we both communicate in terms of generalities, but we're not. You know, I mean, we're certainly not trying to lump everyone together. You know, this is. You know, here's the thing: if any time I have ever, and I can't probably think of an example that was different than this, is when I've asked an atheist, why do you not believe in God. Because let's face it, even if you do believe in evolution, even if you do believe in naturalistic evolution, that doesn't exclusively eliminate you from being able to believe in a deity, even a deistic deity.
Correct.
So I would ask, like, okay, well, what is your reasoning for wanting to reject all the God claims? The answer is never, well, because evolution and naturalism are just so stinking compelling. You know, that's not what I hear. Usually the gut instinct, the immediate response is, the Christian God is immoral. God claims are stupid. None of them make sense. There's too many. They all contradict each other, so they must be false. You know, I don't hear any actual support for their positive position. All I hear is a bunch of attacks against everyone else's positive position. And that's kind of why I've started to generate this perspective.
Understandable. Okay. Okay. I'm an atheist who, I think evolution and naturalism are just so damn good.
Oh, well, you're one of them. Okay. Well, then you're outside the box. Beautiful.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway. Yeah, but that's
well,
going to
then, by the way, then that would make sense as to why you would kind of find offense to that, because you're not in that box. So we've cleared the air sufficiently then?
Yes.
That's okay, good. Beautiful. Beautiful. Right ahead then, sir.
Okay, so the other thing is I'm trying to figure out what kind of a Christian you are.
Sure.
You're an old earth creationist?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Okay. So
but you know, let me preface that. I'm old earth creationist without necessarily vehemently rejecting young earth. I mean, they can say what they want to say. I don't think it's doing a great service necessarily all the time to belief that Christianity is trying to lean upon rationality as opposed to religion and tradition. But that's just a personal opinion. So, you know, what can I do with it?
Yeah. So I guess.
Are you wondering how I reconcile that with scripture at all?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I mean, my only introduction to the Bible, and I have read very little of it. I am going to a Bible study with Sel, actually.
Oh, cool.
So I'm finally reading it, but I really haven't read the book. But I have seen interpretations of the book by Ellen Watts, which is sort of a Buddhist look at Christianity. And I can see.
I think you mentioned that last time on stream.
Right, and I can see perfectly where Scripture is not only important, or could, you know, wouldn't be, it would be important in our lives. It's important. There are important metaphors or important lessons. There are even important ways to believe in the most of the Christian message, I think, as a Buddhist. So a Buddhist doesn't necessarily have to not believe in other religions. I don't know if you get that.
Yeah, no. I think in a conversation before I've associated where, you know, Christ claims to be the way, the truth, and the life. So if Christ was a single lane highway, Buddhism to me is kind of more like a 100-lane interchange type deal.
Right.
So, yeah, I get where you're going.
Okay. So I wouldn't have a problem with you reconciling that with scripture at all. So
that is the reconciliation. I just said it. It's that Jesus claims to be the way, the truth, and the life, and that's if you're gonna take a, you know, it's all good. And by the way, I agree with you. In fact, even Stefan Molyneux agrees with you, and that's kind of been his whole take. Are you familiar with him?
No, Stefan who?
Yeah, Stefan Molyneux. He runs Free Domain Radio is the name of his channel, and I don't know, outreach, whatever you want to call it. But he's all about critical thinking, like introducing critical thinking and philosophy back to the masses, like helping everyone just kind of think and analyze things a little bit better. So, which I think he's very, very beneficial. But he has a similar take, like you and me, that like to throw out all of the Bible is kind of like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. There's some good stuff in there that's really positive for culture and for civility. And that's kind of been his whole take, has been pushing forward towards that. So you might really resonate with someone like that.
Okay, good. Okay, now before we talk about evolution, I want to tell you about this analogy. Okay, so suppose you have this friend who's just an amazing painter. You've seen his paintings, and he just creates these wonderful portraits of beautiful Irish women. Okay, say for instance, against, you know, amazing backgrounds in Ireland, and you go over there and he's got a blank canvas, and he grabs up some paint, some green paint, and he kind of slops it on the canvas, and the you know, and then he starts swirling around and he starts messing with it. And pretty soon this, you know, just out pops this and just absolutely beautiful portrait. And you're like, wow, you know, you did that in like, I watched you do that in like 2 or 3 hours. And it was just incredible how you did that. And then you went over and you met this other painter, and he took a blob of paint and he threw it on the canvas, and then he stepped back and the canvas started dripping, and he like took a whole bunch of different colors and threw them at the top of the canvas, and it started dripping down. And over a period of like 2 or 3 hours, you saw this amazing portrait form, and he didn't touch it at all. He just knew exactly how to throw that blob on that canvas so that it created this amazing portrait. And you probably see where I'm going, right?
Oh, I do. No, but please go finish. Please go ahead.
Which one would you consider the greater painter?
Well, actually, assuming the second one is possible.
Right.
The second one.
Okay.
But again, I don't deem it possible, and here's why.
You mean God's not that great?
No. It's not that God's not that great. It's just not the type of universe we have. We don't have a matter in motion universe. We don't have an Eisenstein universe. We don't have that. We have a Heisenberg universe. We have an uncertain universe. We have quantum foam. We have particles appearing and disappearing with no prediction, appearing at the same time in different locations. We have tons of paradoxical, uncertain things in our universe. So to make that analogy more equatable to me, the secondary artist would have to be painting on top of a really blunt, weird surface that no paint seems to be able to stick, yet he can still turn it into a work of art. That would be a more, but again, you know, we're talking about something, do I think it's possible? Not in this universe we're in. If we had an Einstein universe where it was truly just matter in motion and it's all purely prediction based, absolutely, sure, I'd agree with you. It'd be a perfect analogy.
Okay. So you don't think that a God could predict what was going to happen? Could,
yes. But there is a problem. There's actually a metaphysical problem, is that once you turn God into a micromanager of reality, is you're threatening to violate the nature of whether or not he's actually all powerful at all. You see, when God says, I want it to be this way, but at the same time is constrained because he wants to create creatures that actually can love him, there has to be an introduction of uncertainty into the equation. And the best way for him to complement that is to create a design where an implementation of uncertainty wouldn't cause the entire system to crash. This is why I have an issue with the atheists that claim, well, why isn't creation perfect? Well, it actually is, for its intention. You know, for its intention of actually introducing uncertainty. Adaptation is part of the design. The ability for all of life's ecosystems to not be so strictly, precisely, perfectly aligned with each other, where if one died out, everything collapses. You know, clearly the adaptation to me is actually a design element in the survivability of life.
So you're saying that basically the free will element of it would not be preordained. That, you know, that
free will is preordained, but the choices of the free will are not.
Okay, so that part of it would not be preordained, but why couldn't the entire structure of it, like the overall structure that human beings would arise out of that blob of paint? Why did God have to? Why does God have to tinker during the entire process?
Well, in what way? I mean, just to bring life.
Well, that's where I have questions for intelligent design. Sure. And
well, I'll do my best. I'll do my best.
Okay. So we go back 4.5 billion years ago,
sure,
to the beginning of the earth.
Sure.
Where and when and for how long did God tinker in the process of evolution?
Well, during the entire creation week, in my opinion. I mean, I don't think I could pinpoint exactly, you know, each point he did what. But when we come across something that seems really to the verge of impossible for naturalism, as in someone tinkered with that thing, that seems to be evidence of that to me. You know, I used the cosmological density example the other day for immutable, but that, you know, that's just one of those things where it seems it has the appearance that someone tinkered with it. And I'm not saying like God was micromanaging, tinkering every single molecule across the board, you know, like paying attention to everyone like a chemist in a lab. Like clearly his power is better than that. But was he involved in terraforming the earth for complex life, introducing single-celled simple life to help the terraforming process, create it from lots of sulfur-rich environment into a more oxygen-rich environment by a bunch of sulfur-eating oxidizing bacteria, which all had to come and live and die and pass through their cycle. And then all of a sudden the earth is prepared for more complex, more capable life that an increase in oxygen would require. So it kind of shows that at each stage, maybe there was a little bit of tinkering that doesn't quite seem to make sense from a naturalistic paradigm.
Okay. So you, that is just so unpalatable to me. I'm gonna rock back. I guess if I were to find a deity that I deemed worthy, it would be a deity that would not be like man in that he would have to tinker with things or come down and create, get rid of the sulfur and bring on the oxygen or dump a whole pile of eukaryotes into the ocean. It would be a God that was not involved in that sort of thing. It would be a God that basically created a big blob of the universe and let the universe kind of sort itself out.
Well, but that just sounds a little more than just a innate desire to accept deism to me.
Innate desire to accept deism.
Well, I mean, what is the justification to even go towards a deistic entity as opposed to a personal entity? Like, what's the stopgap?
Because that deity would be unlike me enough to be deserving of the title deity.
Okay. And what rationale are you using to justify them as unworthy?
I don't think men or what we do as far as tool building and all that is all that special in the universe, that there should be a super being that tinkers and has a workshop and plans and thinks things through. I think that's the anthropic God is what I'm rejecting here. I'm trying to get to a wider, like I think somewhere Ellen Watts and I don't know anything about the Bible, but I'm pretty sure that like 40 some years ago, I read that Ellen Watts said somewhere in the Bible, it talks about projecting ourselves onto God and thinking that we know God, or that we understand God through ourselves was blasphemy.
No, that's quite the opposite.
Quite the opposite.
Yeah. In
God's image, man's image, whatever.
Well, the idea, and even Jesus said this, is no one can know the Father except the Son. And the idea is that the Father is so big, is so great, is so huge. You would need a God-like being to be able to even comprehend such a creature. So to even make the statement, as Jesus said, to know the Father is to basically, in essence, claim divinity, to claim godhood.
Yeah, that was what Watts was referring to. And I think he used false idols, thou shalt not make false idols, because any false idol would attempt to limit or to depict God or to constrain God or think that you could know God. That you were big enough to know.
Yeah, I mean, there's multiple different philosophies behind that. The one I tend to gravitate towards is a little bit more cultural leaning. And it's that the introduction of idols into the specific monotheistic religion that the Jews had would have been detrimental to society. And you actually see that. You actually see that produced because the worship of idols, or at least the practice of the worship of idols that was done by the neighboring Canaanite cultures, were very grotesque and monstrous. And so the idea of God limiting cultural influence is seen predominantly all throughout things in the Old Testament, which is also why we need to be careful trying to interpret ancient cultural laws as needing to be carried forward into modern times, because of course those cultural laws were given for a very specific reason, and we don't want to neglect that God was trying to protect the lineage of David and the delivery of the Messiah. If the Jews had been wiped out, if they had not followed the laws, at least for predominant number of their years, none of us would have the opportunity of salvation. That's of course from the Christian perspective. Of course, I'm begging the question to say that, but that's just how I see it.
Okay. So you're saying that the false idol thing wouldn't be connected to the not knowing God?
I'm just saying it wouldn't be connected in isolation. I'm not saying it's a bad answer. It certainly could be. I'm not dismissing it. I'm just saying that, you know, I also kind of have a perspective from a cultural lineage perspective as well. That's all. I'm not saying that's wrong. In fact, I kind of agree. I could see that. Sure.
Okay. So back to when you think God intervened. So, I mean, do you guys think about it? Like the reason ID can never be science is because nobody ever makes a suggestion about when that intervention happened. Like if,
well, it would have, well, I don't know about that, because intervention kind of would have had to be at the very, very beginning. And, and I'll just bring you back to my, you know, fine tuning stuff. And you might like this too, because this is even along with your artist in the blob example. Our universe had to be fine-tuned with a certain number of threshold limits that absolutely have to be essentially in place in order for it to not only to expand and expand at the right speed, but also to slow down at the right speed too. And without that, none of us are here. Now, one of the factors of that is cosmic density, and I mentioned this to the other day. If you were to take all of the matter in the entire universe, not just our galaxy or terrestrial plane, but I mean the entire universe, all of the matter in the entire universe, the amount of it has to be fine-tuned within a threshold of 1 part in 10 to the 60th power, which is an incredibly small factor, but it's hard for many people to quantify. So what I do is I borrow from Hugh Ross. I give his anecdote. If you have an American dime in your pocket, that's how much matter you would have to add or subtract from the universe for none of us to be here. A dime, an American dime.
Yep.
So as far as I can see, there's been intention since the beginning. Now, I'm going to say this, you know, to temper that. There's what, 13 some odd billion years of celestial history before we even get on the stage. Yep. I don't think God and the angels were just twiddling their thumbs that whole time. I think what we probably have is 13 some odd billion years of intensive, diverse, incredibly complex cosmic history that we have zero knowledge of whatsoever. And it's out there. And it's been happening, and there's no way for us to see it or know it, but it's been there and it's been out there, and we're just unaware. We just think we're so special. We just think we're this, you know, little pocket of life, and that because we're so unique and God, you know, displayed so much love on us, we must be the only ones. And they completely negate the fact that God is massively huge, complex, can create anything he wants, and here on this earth did something incredibly diverse with ecosystems, hierarchies, structures. Why do we imagine he would all of a sudden get simplistic once he gets to the cosmic scale? It's just delusional, in my opinion.
Right. There could have been multiple stories out there.
Absolutely, multiple. There could be billions. There could be trillions. I mean, we don't know. We've no. You know, I think there's a reason, truthfully, Speed, that we might all share the same universe with millions of other cultures, and none of us can just reach each other by the laws of physics alone. I think that was designed too. Right. I think we're sitting in one massive creation sandbox, if I could be completely honest with you, and that we've been kept from each other by barriers that none of our cultures can break by simply the law of the universe, saying, okay, create you over here, you over here, you over here, and then you can reach each other. I can do, you know, what needs to be done. Yeah, I mean, frankly, it seems just as feasible as anything else that the creationists say, like, oh, we're the only ones here. This was it. I mean, that seems pretty shallow. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, and that would be a more magnificent story. More. Well,
it says in Revelation, we're going to be judges. We're going to be priests. We're going to be kings. What are we going to be ruling over? What are we going to be ruling over if there isn't more creation out there? I mean, the Christians don't seem to connect these dots. I'm really puzzled by it.
Okay, cool. Okay, so we're getting a little closer, but there's still this.
Are you still there? I think I lost your Speed.
No,
there you go. Okay, there you go.
I just have an occasional cough going on here.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to make sure I didn't drop your mic or lose you there.
I inhale cat hair or raccoon hair.
Same here. I'm with you. Same here.
I figured out. I used to think that it was like, oh, I've got a cold, but I haven't been anywhere, so I can't possibly have a cold. You know,
right.
So I don't know what it is. So
no, I learned quick, but my kitties are worth it, and I'm sure you agree.
Oh, my kitties are worth it.
Absolutely.
I love my kitties. Got 2 of them. Had them for about eight years. They're kind of like twins almost. I thought from the same litters though. Yeah.
Mine still do not really get along.
Oh, well, mine.
I mean they get along for feeding time. Like they'll eat next to each other, and then after that, it's pretty much over. It's back to get the hell away from me. You know.
Mine get along like siblings. That's
beautiful. Yeah, it's beautiful.
They fight occasionally, but they're always trucking together. Anyway,
sure. Throw anything else at me you're interested in.
So the intervention of evolution. You see, I don't see a problem with abiogenesis and evolution, and it's based on, and the both of us are basing that on what we know about what can happen and what is possible. And to get to where we are, we both came through some sort of educational system. We read certain books about science or whatever. And obviously, there's a big difference in what we read because you have a problem with evolution and I do not.
Well, I mean, when I was in school, maybe you'll correct me here, and this was, I'm talking grade school, and this was, gosh, oh my word, it's going on over 30 years ago. But when I was in grade school, I mean, I remember, even though I went to private grade school, we actually had secular science texts. And we would operate off of secular science texts to learn everything. So, and I remember in those texts, biology particularly, that all of these speciations, all of these changes took hundreds of millions of years. Like what we see on Earth today is the product of hundreds of millions of years of evolution, from a tiny cell to something more complex, to fish things, to land fish things, to land things, and all this huge, long, gradual progression. That's what I was taught. That's what I heard growing up. And then all of a sudden, we discover apparently information about the Cambrian explosion, and now we have reports. I mean, first they were trying to say it was 55 million years. And now they started doing some of the, genetic research on some of the trilobites. They're like, well, wait, can't be any more than 20 million years. And now there's geology information and stuff coming out that's pushing it down to 5 or 10 million years. So the more we learn, the shorter that period of time happens. Now, I'll even give you 20 million years. I will. I'll just go ahead and give it to you. Like, if someone really wants to fight the issue that Cambrian was 20 million years, all right, fine. I'm not going to fight it. It's fine. If you want to pick those sources and those scientists to make your argument, that's fine. To me, that there's still a problem. It's taken us 3 million years to get a handful of finches on an extremely diverse ecosystem like the Galapagos that has tons of ecosystem openings for animals to fill. Why don't we have aquatic finches? Why don't we have lizard finches? Why don't we have lizard birds? We've had 3 million years of the Galapagos being isolated, and all we've been able to do is get one finch to selectively breed into a few different finches, and that somehow this is evidence for evolution a little bit confuses me.
Okay. So for me, 10 million years in the Cambrian is more than enough time, given what I know about embryology and how an embryo develops and how little change is needed in the genotype to create vastly different phenotypes. So and that was one of the problems, to tell you the truth. When I was reading embryology, when I started reading it, I realized it's like, I don't really believe in evolution in a way, because I was searching for answers to a confusion that I had about how could this possibly have happened. And I was looking for this way that it could possibly have happened. So I spent 1.5 years studying embryology, and I came up with the answers about how this could possibly have happened so quickly. But if you're asking about finches and things today, you've got to understand that why are there these coelacanths floating around in the ocean, when they've been around for 300 million years? Every species line is going to have a different speed in which it differentiates, and there are going to be impacts. There are going to be periods. Environmental changes are why speciations happen. So it isn't so much what's happening in a species as what's happening in the planet, the rest of the environment. Biologists and people that think about the mind, they often think that everything is happening inside of us. Well, no, it's a much bigger picture than that.
Okay.
And during the Cambrian, there are various theories about what went wrong in the Cambrian, but there was mass extinction. There was massive change afoot. And with that massive change afoot, there were a couple things going on in the Cambrian that aren't going on today. Number one, there's a possibility that there was no sexual selection. Like, for instance, if you met a girl with 6 arms and 3 legs, you may not be attracted, right?
Mm.
Okay. These guys didn't quite have that problem. They used to spread sperm into the stream, and I mean, wherever it landed, it didn't matter what it landed on, how attractive their mate was. So there was a lot of speciation going on in that period, and that's where the body plans developed. And for body plans to develop, it doesn't take as much as you think it does. It doesn't take as much fine tuning. And you realize that when you see how embryos bloom, like you've seen a flower come out of a little green bud, right? You got this little green globe in the center of a bunch of leaves.
Mm-hmm.
And if you were to speed it up and watch it over a period of like 3 days or a week or whatever, you would watch this thing just unfold and bloom out, right? And it is that blooming that every embryo does, and that's how the genotype becomes the phenotype. And it's a remarkable process, and the more you see it, the more convinced you become that, well, for one thing, you wonder, why in the hell do we all turn out the same every time? I mean, it's kind of amazing that we do.
It is. Well, to me, it's a sign of design. The fact that all terrestrial phyla shares the same pedactyl limbs, 1 bone, 2 bone, 5 bones. I mean, to me, you'd almost have to say, well, all pedactyl limbs must have come from one original, I don't know, gargantuan fish, bird, aquatic platypus thing. I don't know. I mean, there had to be, for all 70 terrestrial phyla to all have the same limblage, then they must have all came from the same thing, right?
Yep.
So that, to me, it's either a sign that there must be some sort of weird Frankenstein creature at the very beginning of life, or really it's just a sign that there's some sort of shared design. But you said something interesting, and I loved it, is that not every species will evolve at the same rate. Like, we put bacteria in a lab and stuff, and we stimulate them, and then we expose them to different environments. We can get them to evolve pretty fast, because they have many generations in a short period of time. They have tons of offspring at once. So we can kind of shortchange these generational operations across the board here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. But I have a video. I see you have something maybe you want to share too.
I do.
Okay, beautiful. I'll tell you what, do yours. Go ahead and do yours. I'm going to add it onto the stream here. Okay. Here, okay. You're on screen there. Do you want me to make it full screen? Maybe you can zoom that in a little bit, because it's a little hard to.
Is it hard to see?
A little bit. It's hard to read, but I guess if you're going to read it to us, it's fine. If you're going to read it to us, it's fine.
Oh, you don't really have to read it at all.
Okay.
What I really want to show you is the picture.
Sure, go ahead.
And I can't make it any bigger than that. That's
okay. That's okay.
That's actually on a 55-inch monitor, and I'm stretching about as far
as no. It's just my resolution on my little screen. It's fine. It's fine.
But this is the Tiktaalik to human, basically, transformation, where it has the bones colored, and it shows you these different parts. Well, I've gone backwards over here. Can you see my cursor?
Yeah, I can see your cursor. Yeah.
Okay. So I've gone backwards here over to the fish part of it, to the fish limbs. And these little remnants here, these things are, they're little they're cartilage, little discs of cartilage, and they're all present, and they keep modifying very slightly. And if you look at embryology, when this forms, there are gradients that go like that way and that way. So there are gradients and these cross gradients. And then if you end up at this point, you'll end up with, well, 40% of this and 60% of that, or 60% of this and 40% of that. And that's called a threshold. And that will turn on a certain set of Hox genes and other, different genes as it's moving. And as this thing is expanding, these things can become more elongated because of the temporal changes. That you've got 4D here. You've got 3-dimensional, 3 spatial dimensions. You got a 4th dimension, And there are like just a few proteins involved in some of these body plan layouts, that sort of thing. And it just changes as you go along. So you can see that not that many changes had to happen. I mean, of course, there are many other.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a matter of functionality too,
right.
Because, you know, each one of these changes are a product of, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but from an evolutionary standpoint, each one of these changes was the product of the survivability of a bunch of other changes. So the ones that were changes that were bad or fatal caused the extinction, and this is the one that managed to push forward, basically, right?
Right.
Okay. No, go ahead and continue.
And they're all done with these little proteins like that.
Right. No, that's cool.
Which
really
are,
cool, actually. That's kind of a neat little 3D model.
Yeah, there's a bunch of those.
I think Sal almost had something like that up on.
Yeah, he did.
Thing
anyway, so I just wanted to point that out, that, you know, the understanding of it, that's what I mean by knowledge base. And when I see people, something that really shocks me is the brain trust at Standing for Truth. These guys have not investigated this stuff as deeply as some of the people that they interacted with. The other day when John Maddox had what's his name on there, Doc Savage.
I think, yeah, I remember that. Yeah, of course.
That was the rudest thing I've ever seen.
I tuned out on some of it.
I hope so. But I mean,
I did catch some of the major parts, but I mean, it was very, very science intensive. And when it gets really that in deep, I kind of just refer to Maddox, because that's not, I mean, my wheelhouse has been more culture, history, morality, sociology, psychology, that type stuff. Like these, you know, we each kind of have our own wheelhouse. And when it gets into the really intensive science stuff, that's kind of, mine's more philosophy. If I'm delving into science, it's because there's philosophy under I can use usually.
But you picked the wrong horse. Doc Savage has studied this for probably a couple of decades, or, you know, at least a decade.
Well, I don't know. It didn't sound like he was doing so good in there answering some of the questions.
Well, I guess
that's to each their own.
He was having trouble understanding where Maddox was coming from. Maddox was all over the place, which indicates the shallowness of his knowledge. And let's not talk about John specifically, but these creationists, their knowledge base is so shallow that when they deal with a real scientist and a real professional, I've seen this with Herman Mays and a few others, they have no idea what in the hell these creationists are talking about, because they're all over the place and they're not making any sense at all. When I listen to the way they talk about some of these things, my brain is going in like 5,000 different directions, and I'm screaming, no, what on earth?
But do understand, Speed, we kind of see it the same way too. Like, we struggle, you know, and that's why we're doing this, is because we're hoping to kind of bridge the gap, if you will, kind of, you know, open up the lines of communication a little more, because the whole stance of kind of like sitting there and saying, well, I'm right, you're wrong. Well, that's great. That's good. That's validating. But let's have a conversation. You know, let's figure out exactly where this stuff makes sense or doesn't make sense, and then let's operate from there. It's really all I'm trying to bring to the situation. But let me pull something up for you, because I had found this. Oh yeah, what type of comment? We might as well look at the comments. What we got? I haven't been paying much attention.
People are commenting. Immutable Destiny is here. And Anthony Maurice was going to talk to us, and then he backed out.
I think if Anthony is the same Anthony I'm thinking of, we might have a conversation tomorrow morning. I think it might be the same Anthony.
He's the ABio guy, but he's afraid to talk to us because he keeps saying he's going to talk to us, and he never does.
Well, I believe we're planning a conversation tomorrow morning, and me and him are maybe going to unpack a few things. So tune in for that. That'll probably be interesting. Okay, but let me share something with you, because I was actually working on a project, kind of doing a little bit of research, and I was trying to figure out, you know, if there were some species in the phylogeny that didn't really make a lot of sense in the time scale. So I would like to play this, and just let me play it, and then give me your take on it. Just anything that you notice or anything that you think is kind of off the wall or something. And this actually has to do with the Evolution of whales, because again, remember the point I was saying about how it's easy for bacteria, smaller life forms, things with a lot of offspring in a short period of time, they can evolve pretty easily and rapidly. But large, complex mammals are a little bit of a nightmare for an evolutionary paradigm because they take a long time to reproduce. They take a long time to mature, to get up to sexual maturity. They have very few number of offspring, so they can end up really playing nightmares with the phylogenetic clock and the assertion of how long it took mutations to begin. But let me play this for you.
Well, before you do that, do you happen to know the age of consent for whales?
Whenever they're able, when there's grass on the field, that's what I've heard.
It's like 3 or 4 years or something like that.
Yeah, it's certainly a little bit of a span of time. They do only have one child, and they take a while to nurse them. You know, they're like humans. You know, we don't populate. I mean, some of us do, but I mean, a vast majority of us don't populate like rabbits. You know, I mean, it's like for us too, on an evolutionary paradigm, we're a little bit slower on the uptake than even a lot of other animals that are much simpler and much easier to replicate. But let me see. Oh, here it is. Okay, found it.
You want to hear something silly? Bears can't parallel park. You want to hear something even sillier? Darwin thought that bears could turn into whales. Back in the 1800s, when Darwin first published The Origin of Species, this is exactly what he said. And he was brutally mocked by scientists of his day for thinking something so ridiculous. He even retracted the idea from later editions of his book. But here's the kicker. Scientists of today think essentially the same thing. Stupid Darwin thinks bears could have turned into whales. How ridiculous. Everyone knows these wolf, pig, weasel, hippo things or it turned into whales. My, how the tables have turned. Back in the 80s and the 90s, a series of fossils were found that rocked the evolutionary landscape. Paleontologists thought that they had found a clear transitional series of fossils documenting the evolution of whales. University of Chicago, evolutionary biology.
This guy.
Sorry. Guys, if you're going to have a debate in chat, remember, I'm totally cool with it, but let's try to keep it, on a singular topic and let the debaters actually do it. If that's the case, mods, no mod abuse. If you're having a conversation, you don't mod your own conversation. You don't time anyone out. Okay. Just want to make that clear, all right?
What's going on over there?
Guys, have fun. You guys have fun.
Coyne says in his book, Why Evolution is True, whales happen to have an excellent fossil record, courtesy of their aquatic habits and robust, easily fossilized bones. This is one of our best examples of an evolutionary transition. Wow, one of the best. Let's take a look at the story behind whale evolution. Is it a good argument or not? So according to Coyne, whale evolution is such great evidence since we have a chronologically ordered series of fossils, and it goes something like this. The sequence begins with a raccoon-sized animal called Indohyus, living 48 million years ago. 52 million years ago, we see a wolf-sized creature called Pakicetus, which is a bit more whale-like than Indohyus. At 50 million years ago, there's the remarkable Ambulocetus. Rhodocetus, 47 million years ago, is even more aquatic. Finally, at 40 million years ago, we find the fossils of Basilosaurus and Dorodon, before we have our modern whales. Let's take a look a little bit closer at this chronologically ordered series of fossils. If you're paying attention, you might be thinking something fishy is going on here, but no, you'd be wrong. That would not be a bad pun because whales are mammals, not fish. But also, yes, something mammally was going on here. Granting the standard Darwinian dates for these fossils, Indohyus is dated as far younger than his supposed descendants, and he's not the only one, more on that later. This is common practice in evolutionary analysis, to ignore where species actually show up in the fossil record and place them wherever makes Darwinian sense, creating what are called chronological inversions, or ghost lineages. Oh, that's so spooky. The fossil record often reveals fossils out of the order that they're supposed to be in. For just a couple of other examples, let's take a look at bird evolution. It's supposed to go theropod dinosaurs evolving into birds, with the fossil Archaeopteryx being evidence of this as an intermediate fossil. But the problem is he appears long before the dinosaurs he was supposed to have descended from. Evolution also got a big stick in its spokes with this guy, Tiktaalik, a fish-like creature that was for years crowned as the smoking gun transitional fossil of fish starting to go from the sea to the land. Brilliant evidence, just what they expected. Until in 2010, fossil footprints of true tetrapods were found in Poland, long before they were supposed to have evolved. And all of a sudden, Pictologist was dethroned as a transitional fossil because, again, the dates are all out of order. Hey, everybody, I'd like you to meet my grandpa. Oh, so cute. Is that his name, or... No, his name is Seymour. He is my grandpa. What? Doesn't make any sense. Back to the chronologically ordered series of fossils, Basilosaurus and Dorodon are considered fully aquatic whales. They're not a transition to anything. Okay, maybe they're just trying to pad their numbers a little bit. Big deal. Surely the rest of the fossils are intermediate and transitional, right? Well, that depends on how you define intermediate. In paleontology, intermediate doesn't mean what we think it means. Like my parents are intermediate between me and my Gam Gam and Pop Pop.
Oh, hello, sweetie.
Hi, Gam Gam.
Oh, my, how tall you've grown. Ah, but you're so skinny. Would you like your Gam Gam to make you a nice pot pie? You know, staying healthy.
By intermediate, paleontologists usually mean a fossil is merely morphologically intermediate. In other words, if a fossil has features of a supposed ancestor and descendant, then it is classified as an
yeah, you could.
There's something you wanted to say?
It's cute. Who is this guy? Is this
this is off of, I think it's Science. Wait, I might have to find it. I actually saved it off of online. I downloaded it. Let me see if the file tells me. Oh, long story short.
Yeah.
Whale, the name of the video is A Whale of an Evolution Tale. Long story short is the name of it. I'm not sure of his channel. I'd have to search for it.
It's a long story short. That guy.
Right.
And I did listen to this one.
Oh, you did? Oh, you've already heard it. Okay, well then I don't need to play it. You can just give your response.
Yeah, you know, this is why I want to learn to make good video content, because people fall for good video content, and that's really good. I mean,
he definitely has got some talent, creativity-wise.
Oh, he really knows his crap when it comes to the YouTube, but when it comes to evolution, I wouldn't listen to a word he said. He's making a kind of a silly mistake, but it's a mistake that any student would make. This business with different phylogenies and finding fossils, like Tiktaalik, you know, being 10 or 15 million years ahead of some tracks that they found of another lineage. Well, if you start to draw the trees and you start looking at how the lineages could have occurred, number one, we don't know if Tiktaalik was our ancestor, or if these tracks that showed up earlier are our ancestor. But if you look at the way trees branch, there's no reason why Tiktaalik or coelacanth shouldn't be.
Well, that's the whole issue. But that's the whole issue. It's the fact that we have zero evidence that these are intermediate species, other than the fact they look like each other. Like the argument for intermediate species of evolution is just as strong, like and just as logically valid as that for shared design. That's why I don't get. It's not evidence really of anything that they look the same, and that's why I don't understand why an entire ideology in science has sprung up over it. It's just bizarre to me.
Well, because it's not about that. The fossils led probably to the thinking, but actually Darwin didn't have. I don't think fossils led to how he thought.
Oh, I don't think so. No, I think he wished. I think he said he wished he had a lot.
Right, there were observations.
He was hoping that fossil evidence was going to back up his theory as time went by, but sadly, he never gave us any actual falsification criteria for his theory. So it's kind of just left in the milieu out there, and it's just kind of not been able. Even though we do find things that it can't explain, that it can't, possibly reconcile for us, we're all told we still have to keep believing it. It seems religious to me.
And this harkens back to what we were talking about, where we have these knowledge bases and we believe different things. I do not believe evolution because I went out and looked at a bunch of fossils, or that I listened to people that looked at fossils. I believe in evolution because of what I know about chemistry, biology, molecular biology, and embryology. And then with that field of knowledge, we were able to make predictions like Tiktaalik. And we went out and found it. I mean, they predicted Tiktaalik, and they went out and found it.
Well,
which is a prediction.
Don't think that that's just a feasible something to exist? And I mean, that's like, how is that really justification of much of anything, in my opinion? I mean, I guess I'm just a little confused on that.
Well, I guess it's, it's looking at the structure of Tiktaalik's limbs, that colored picture that I was showing you before, and knowing what I know about embryology and knowing that you can get there from here and seeing how that happened. But the amazing part is that these, oh God, I forget his name now, the famous guy that found Tiktaalik, I've got his books. What is it? Anyway, knowing that, they went out and they predicted where that fossil would be, which layers it would be in. And then they looked over a map and they found, oh my God, up in the Arctic here, that particular kind of rock or that layer of rock from that period should be there. Let's go dig. And they dug for like 2 years and they found it.
Right.
And those are the kinds of things that are confirming, that sort of thing, that they would confirm. But I mean, no one ever claimed that we evolved from Tiktaalik or that Tiktaalik had any children, as Cantavin would say. I mean, it's a misunderstanding of how.
Well, then where do we evolve from then? Just something we haven't discovered yet?
Well, we don't know. And the chances are we are never going to know unless we can get DNA out of those things. And I think we're starting to get little pieces, and we can put together. It's the same thing with abiogenesis. We're never going to know which particular pathway started this whole thing off and led to us. There's too many possibilities to go back. We're looking at a historical science, which molecular genetics is a historical science. We're going back and we're trying to figure out what history was based on what we can observe now and what we can know, but we're never going to be 100% certain whether Tiktaalik was, our grandma or whatever.
Right.
But you've got to, like, he's being extremely
well, what about the argument?
Untruthful.
What about the argument? Well, I don't know. I found it pretty truthful. I haven't found anything that's against anything he said. But what is the
disingenuous?
What is the solution for the whale timing? There just isn't enough time for all the necessary mutations and life cycles and generations to create what needs to fit on the time clock for evolution. I mean, that is a difficult philosophical reconciliation for me.
I don't see that as such a problem. Hang on.
Well, I mean, but if
I don't see 10 or 20 million years as a problem for some of these changes to be made.
Well, I do.
I know.
I do. And granted, there is a chance that I'm suffering from a lack of knowledge. But I mean, if there's something I'm missing, I mean, let me know. I mean, if there's something where it should make sense, there should be enough time for speciation, mutation, dying off, selection, all this stuff that takes, even again with the finches, a few million years. I mean, taking account all these massive mutations over, or not just, I mean, the whale is one example, but we are talking about the emergence of all 70 of the terrestrial phyla on Earth within the Cambrian explosion window. That seems, I mean, like just on a genomic level, and I understand we can't study, the genomes, the DNA of these things. We'd learn a lot more if we did. We can't do that. I wish we could. But the idea that all of this somehow evolved in this really short window, all this incredible, massive diversity, including complex skeletal structure, brains, eyes, it's not like it's just like one appendage. It's a vast multitude of tons of different types of appendages with different purposes that all share similar design components. Like there's something about evolution in a utilitarian sense that really bugs me, and it's the one thing that evolutionists never seem to really be able to help me reconcile. It's the explanation of the existence of convergent evolution. That I will never understand. I won't understand how two species completely unrelated by any type of phylogenetic comparison to each other, any type of relation to each other, yet they develop the exact same types of structures, proteins, toxins, whatever it is they have in their system, in their complexity. They don't generate something new and different from the rest of the animal kingdom. They develop something that other animals they're not even related with also have. That is really perplexing to me from an evolutionary standpoint.
Okay, that's the intelligence of the environment that you're seeing there, and
well, the environment is intelligent now.
oh yes, it is. It's extremely intelligent.
Let's unpack that a little bit. Go right
We'll
ahead.
unpack that later. This long story short guy, he is either lying through his teeth or he's ignorant.
Well, he's connected with quite a few of those big time scientists like Meyer and stuff. So I mean, he certainly has access to some science. I mean, I don't think he's just talking out of a vacuum. Oh,
don't get me started on that. Immutable Destiny told me it's Neil Shubin is the name I was looking for, and and I have his books, but I couldn't remember Jack Nicholson's name the other day. I mean,
you're getting old there, Steve.
Oh, my mind is going. I mean,
oh no, don't say that though, because then we're not going to think that we can trust your opinion on evolution. No,
right.
Remember, tell everyone you're super sharp. That's what we have to go with.
Well, I read about 10 papers yesterday and the day before and the day before, and I read about 15 textbooks at a time, and I'm memorizing a ton of terms.
Oh, there you go.
To hell with Jack Nicholson. What has he been in lately, right? I mean, really.
Point. That's a fair point. A little washed up, I think, at this point.
Yeah.
Well, he's had a few scandals attached to him too. He's not exactly.
Oh, has he really?
Oh yeah, no. He likes to beat up hookers every once in a while. Apparently.
Oh my God, I thought that was Mel.
Oh, maybe him too. I'm sure it's a Hollywood problem. I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So where the hell were we?
Oh, well, it was just, I was just talking about the whale thing and the speciation, the amount of time. But I mean, if you want to kind of move on and stuff, I mean, that's.
Yeah, if you just sit down and draw the phylogenetic trees and you take a look at, the time and how it slices across.
Well, no, but I can't. But again, Speed, you're not following me. I can't trust that. I can't trust us digging up two dead things and saying this dead thing looks like this dead thing. They must have came from each other. There's no logic or science to back that statement. There's just assumption. There's just there's begging the question, naturalism is true, therefore these things look alike, they must be coming from each other. You would have to prove naturalism before you could use that argument, because it is a presuppositional naturalist argument.
No.
You're saying there's no divine mind in it. It must have been by chance. Therefore, naturalism.
I don't like chance. Don't say that word to me.
Oh, well, you either believe there was a mind behind it or you don't.
Now you said, okay, wait a minute. Is that the only option?
Well, yeah. What is the other option? Tell me. Give me another option.
The other option is things that we see every day. I mean, drop some pretty colored ink into a jar of water in an aquarium, and go and look at some of those 4K videos they do with colors.
I understand, but who made the ink? Where'd the ink come from? Who's the artist?
We're not talking about the ink. We're talking about the forms that appear when you look at those 4K pictures of all of this, the Bernoulli motion, and when you look at a tornado, when you look at all these structures that appear in nature, and we know that God is not making every flower right now. It's happening.
I'll tell you what, Speed, would you like to try something a little impromptu? Yeah, Anthony himself is now, I won't put this on you. I won't demand this of you, but Anthony is asking to come in and say something. Do you want to have an engagement, or you just want to finish our conversation? I'll leave it up to you.
Anthony would just take us way off base at this point.
Okay, so you would prefer to? Okay, that's
fine. We have reached out to Anthony, and we want to have a conversation with him where he is the focus. But right now, he is not the focus. You are, and I am.
That's fine. Sure, no problem. I'll respect your wishes. Not an issue.
I don't know. Anthony just goes crazy in chat on abiogenesis. I'm like, I think like his father his father abandoned him, and his father was an abiogenesis.
Let's be careful, because we don't want to offend someone in chat. The fact that I'm not letting them in here to actually defend themselves.
No, I'm trying to make a joke about why is Anthony so crazy about abio? What is he?
He's a chemist, apparently. Apparently he does chemistry. So
and we wanted him to come on and tell us about that. So Anthony, please come on. We've me and Immutable have invited you. We're going to have a peaceful conversation. We're not going to jump on you. At least I don't plan on it.
Well, maybe if Anthony is a little uncomfortable doing it on your channel, we can do it on mine. I can
post it on yours. Sure.
We can act moderator, and you guys can do the same thing. Download it, post it on your channels. The same old stuff. No issue. If you want to do that, if you and Anthony want to work out something out in the time, I'll be happy to facilitate. No issue.
Yeah, if he's nervous about our channel, well, we're glad to do it on.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I'm even nervous about some channels. That's why I didn't go on Raging Atheist channel. Because if I went on Raging Atheist channel, number one, he wouldn't let me talk. Number two, if he did let me talk and own him, then he would delete the footage. So I don't trust him. So you know, sometimes moderation, neutral ground is sometimes the best way to ensure everyone can kind of have equal footing. So, well, yeah, maybe you guys can work something out, and if he's interested, we'll set it up. No issue. But anyway, go ahead, Speed. Go ahead and continue.
Yeah, that sounds like. And I don't know where the hell we were. Where were we?
No, we were just still going on the evolution thing. I think we were talking about intelligence in nature, and I think you had said something about that.
Oh, about squirrels.
Yeah, maybe you could, open that up a little bit.
Yeah, there's great intelligence in the patterns in the world around us, and it's incredible. You know, when you focus on probability, well, let me go off on sort of a tangent here. On my side, I started to put up a bunch of really lousy videos on reduction in science and reducing things, and I compared it with Ellen Watts. Ellen Watts, his favorite thing was to talk about the finger in the moon and how you put you know, the child, when you point at the moon, looks at your finger instead of the moon. So does my cat. When I'm trying to point, mousy, they're looking at my finger, right? So anyway, it's mistaking the finger for the moon. And we think the way we think about nature and the world around us is in a very reductive sense. And we miss out on the unbelievable complexity that's going on. And then we think in terms of probability and chance, which is just mathematical bullshit when it comes to the world.
Okay, help me with that. Because in an improbable universe where matter is not in motion, where nothing is defined or predicted, but anything could be anything else, how do we reconcile that?
Wait a minute, matter's not in motion? Of course.
Well, we're not just strictly matter in motion, we're uncertain matter in motion. We're not there's too much invariables in our universe to account for predictability. We're not an Einstein universe. We're not as Einstein painted us. We're just matter in motion, you know, going through the steps, and you know what started all the matter and process, we're just following through on that. That's the way that Einstein thought, and that's also why he was deistic. But Heisenberg's uncertainty principle just completely obliterated that. That's not the type of universe we live in.
Well, Heisenberg's, God, we don't want to get into physics because I need another life for it. But Heisenberg's uncertainty principle is a measurement problem across 4 dimensions. Of our universe, exactly. We don't have any metrics of predictability on some of these quantum levels, and that's a problem. Well, yeah, on the quantum level, every atom in your body or every little subparticle in your body could be another way, but overall, you are probably here. And I am probably here, and we are so probably here.
Oh, I disagree. I think
we're here.
Yeah, I think we are improbably here. I don't see any reason to think that there is any probability in our existence whatsoever. I see nowhere to reconcile that.
Wait a minute. If we were improbably here, then we would keep disappearing every few 300 milliseconds and fuzz out like Douglas Adams, you know.
Oh yeah, I agree. If we were naturalistically here, we would not be here having this conversation. Absolutely, we would have. Life would have gone extinct before it ever had the chance to.
Well, then you're misunderstanding quantum mechanics. Quantum mechanics is primarily at that extremely micro level and at large probabilities. By the time you get up to an atom with electrons going around it, you are at a very large probably there.
Well,
because so many atoms are probably there.
Everything on the macro level is controlled by the micro level. There's no separating the uncertainty of the micro level to somehow explain certainty at a macro level. I don't follow that.
Yeah, but the probability is so high by the time you get to the level of the atom that the atom is always there.
How?
We'd have to do the quantum mechanics.
Well, no. I mean, how could we couldn't even have all those things, and we couldn't even have quantum foam. We couldn't even have reality unless we had all the fine tuning that comes along with it. It just wouldn't. None of it would be here. Okay. Say you have. Okay. Let me try to bring this into a philosophical anecdote here. Okay. Let's say you have a perfect system. It's perfect. Everything inside the system is perfectly aligned. You have set it up exactly as it's supposed to be. Okay. Nothing deviates. Nothing can deviate. Everything has to follow the path exactly as you have lined it up. Okay. Well, number one, you've just created a slave universe. number one. Number two, your system, if you were to introduce anything like free will, uncertainty, invariability into it, you will cause the entire system to collapse. You see, the only way to have a functional reality with free will and uncertainty is to have a free, uncertain universe of which for it to exist in. You transpose uncertainty into a certain system, it destroys itself, collapses. It's done. Done. We're all gone. And it's the same thing with life on Earth. If God had created a perfect ecosystem, as the way atheists kind of tend to throw it at me, where everything was connected perfectly, there was no death, there was no extinction events, everything like that. Everything was just perfectly synergized with each other. Okay, great. The moment that one of those species goes extinct, everything goes extinct. Great, perfect. What a wonderful design, right? No, that's a garbage design by an idiot God. A smart God, if he wants to have an uncertain universe full of free will and dynamic decisions, is going to have to create a system that can handle the stress of uncertainty. That's what we have.
I'm going to have to give you a free will and mind to get out of jail free pass because I don't agree with free will or mind. I don't believe there's such a thing as mind. But we don't want to go down that we don't want to go down that lane today.
That's fine. That's
sort of thing.
That's okay.
So,
I know we got about 20 minutes or so, but go ahead. Whatever you want to tackle.
Okay, but if you're looking at a monitor in front of you, get a magnifying glass and zoom in on that, and maybe a microscope. Like I've got a 180 power stereoscope back here, and if I zoom in on these pixels, okay, what I'm going to see is a whole lot of flopping around and fuzzy, foamy pixels flickering in and out. But when I back off to this point, I see your icon and I see your avatar and my avatar, and I see this, beautiful picture. Now, at the macro level, when you start to move up in range, these improbabilities of quantum mechanics become very, very certain, unbelievably certain. And that's the universe we live in. That's why when you got up this morning, you were still Smokey. You were not somebody else. You didn't, turn into one of what is that? The fish and the flower that appear in Douglas Adams' thing in the upper atmosphere. I mean, that's what would happen to you if quantum mechanics and the probabilities of quantum mechanics appeared at the macro level. They do not. That's not the way it goes. I mean, there are some things possibly, that are uncertain, but I don't quite buy the whole uncertain universe. But we got to stay out of physics and we got to stay out of mind stuff.
That's fine.
Back to biology.
Well, but at least now you kind of know where my brain's at.
I do.
Okay.
Yeah, I do.
Well,
And
you can decompress it too. Maybe think about it. Maybe you have another take on a different show or something for sure.
Well, the accusation I would make toward you is that you're mistaking the finger for the moon. You're using reductive thinking to think about the immense world around.
I'm using abductive thinking, and it is valid. It is valid logic.
Yeah,
I'm taking what I can see, applying it to what is observable, and then I'm carrying that forward to try to explain how it goes against improbability. Now, I haven't heard anything from you yet about how the improbable is suddenly probable. It just kind of sounds like it's opposite Wednesday and we're saying things that aren't.
The improbable is suddenly probable.
Like it's extremely improbable we would have a universe at all. It's extremely improbable we would have a planet capable of life. It's actually extremely improbable that we'd even have a planet with water. And I mean, you can even look around the universe and see that. It's extremely improbable that we'd be this far from the sun. It's extremely improbable that we'd have these planets in their exact alignment to allow us to, again, exist at all. It's extremely improbable that we would have a moon that would be able to control the tides in exactly the right way, that would also cultivate, the Earth changing and forming, and then more complex life being able to form. All these, I mean, you just go layer of all these things that really could have been something else. And if they were anything else, none of us would be here. I mean, if any of these random variables, if any of these, whatever these things that emerge had ended up being anything other than what they were, anything, I mean, even down to a very, very minute scale, a very, very small threshold of tolerability, if any of these things had wavered off this extremely tiny threshold, even minutely, none of us are here. And I have a very difficult time finding a reconciliation that somehow is probable. At what I sense is a bit of a circular argument of, well, we're here, so it must have worked, right?
Well, there's
Because that doesn't work. That's just pure circular logic. Like, well, it worked clearly because we're here. Well, how do you know we're here? Because we know it worked. Like, it's just that's not gonna fly for me.
Are you here? Are you really here?
I don't know. I might not be. I might be a brain in a vat in the Matrix, just imagining all of this being used as a power source for machines. I have no clue.
I know, and if you're not really here and you're hosting me on your show, I'm really scared.
Well, that's why the atheists don't usually like me either, because I don't mind taking epistemological nihilist approaches, because I have a philosophical understanding of how we perceive reality, and I don't need to find a way to force my spirituality into the philosophy. I simply need to allow the philosophy to be constrained by what I understand from Scripture. That's all. So it's not an issue for me to say philosophically, you and me can't actually know anything about anything until we know absolutely everything about something. Like, I mean, say one day we proved string theory. Imagine that. But say one day we proved string theory and we look into the very, very tiniest fabric of reality. Will that still tell us whether or not this is just a construct, just a creation? The real reality is what's outside our universe, and we're just something that's inside something much, much larger. We won't know. We'll never know for 100% certain. Even Christians who take faith, pistis, certainty based upon belief and assurance, we're still not 100% that we're not brains in a vat. Now they'll say otherwise because they want to show that they have that much faith in Scripture. I don't think it's being philosophically honest. That's why I don't say that. I say I approach it as I try to be as philosophically honest, individually honest as I can. And what the Scripture says about my personal belief as a Christian, and what my philosophical beliefs are a human, are two completely different things. Right. You understand where I'm going?
Yeah, we are basically, for people who like certainty, we are forever screwed. We're not going to... It'd be a good name for our species, forever screwed.
Outstanding.
And I think I love it. When I hear about that tree of knowledge and the first bite of the apple and all that stuff, that whole metaphor, I mean, that just strikes me as the human condition. That we know enough to be forever screwed.
Well, let me tell you how and I'll give you a little unpacking real quick of how I see it. Apparently, I didn't know this, but apparently I share some perspectives of this along with the patristic fathers, some of the first, people that studied Scripture. And this is how I see it. I don't think God's plan for mankind ever actually changed, even from the moment that he created him. And so I try to discern from Scripture, what was God's plan for man? And you actually have to go to the very last book of the Bible to find it. And this is why I say this. I say it a little tongue in cheek, but I think the first prophecy of the Bible is in the last book of the Bible. Because I think the first prophecy was that which was made perhaps in the celestial realms, that let the entities such as Satan, angels, whatever it was, know what God was intending to do with man. And it's Revelation 20, verse 5, where it basically alludes that our intended future position was that of priests, kings, rulers, and those that were going to be right under the throne of God, dispensing justice and order throughout all of his creation, as big and wide as it might be. So if you take that as the understanding that was ultimately always the original plan for mankind, the tree of knowledge of good and evil was going to be ultimately, eventually necessary in order for mankind to take their position of being able to judge and discern right from wrong. Problem is, we jumped the gun. We rushed. We didn't want to wait. It was mankind's first failure at delayed gratification. We were offered the opportunity to listen and abide, to learn all of the full scope and spectrum of God's laws and knowledge, character and intentions. But instead of letting him take his time and teach us and grow us and mature us, we just ran, grabbed the fruit and said, we want to know it now. And we created this disaster because we weren't ready for the knowledge. It was too much for us. We didn't know enough. We weren't prepared. But we made our bed and now we're lying in it. Did I lose your speed? Uh-oh. Oh,
No,
there you are. Oh, no,
no,
it was another
no.
cough. Another hairball.
Another hairball. Yeah, I'm coughing up hairballs. And that is literally the truth. Even my Apple mouse fails. I keep having to blow into it because the cats are all over me. But yeah, this whole thing with knowledge of death and knowledge of our condition is a conundrum. And I believe that that's kind of where the early writers were getting to. But when you talk about Revelation, don't spoil the ending for me because I haven't read that book. So, yeah. I've been kind of waiting for the Netflix series.
Yeah, you'll be waiting a while, I think.
I'll be waiting. Oh my God, the Asimov Foundation.
By the way, if it helps you, they always get it wrong. Like I don't know who makes these religious videos, and I don't know why they can't find a scholar to reference whenever they make them. But of course, it's not about telling the story. It's just about making something dramatic. That's really all it's about.
Right.
But it really is theologically vacuous. Like when they make it, they seem to like really kind of say, like they took the skeleton of the story and then they just added all the meat themselves. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like they didn't take any culture or history or it'd be like trying to tell like an ancient Persian tale, like transposed into Hollywood. It just doesn't make a lot of sense,
Yeah, it's never going to turn out well. I don't know. They're going to do Asimov's Foundation trilogy on Netflix.
That sounds. And I did not. I heard nothing of it. I am an Asimov fan. Absolutely.
I am so sad though. They said 2021, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to be 70 years old on January 7th. And it like when I go to one of the Marvel movies with my sons and stuff, and they show the preview and they say coming next summer or 20, whatever, and I'm like, oh shit, I'm gonna. It just really aggravates me. And Game of Thrones. I'm so glad I got to see the end of that.
Right. No, absolutely. No, absolutely.
At this age, you never know.
No, absolutely. Indeed. Well, Speed, sir, unless you had anything else for me, I think we had a pretty good conversation.
Yeah, I think we got into it a little bit. I think I have a sense of where you are with evolution, and I'm hoping that you have a sense of why I believe what I believe and how it isn't really based on fossils and bullshit. Yeah. I mean, I study these things, and I've studied them pretty much my entire life.
And by the way, you have not given me any impression that you've gone hard on the Christian God. Like, I believe he doesn't exist. I know from falsification. Like, you haven't presented that, so I don't really have a reason or evidence so far. I hope we could get into that one of these sessions. If you have issues, go ahead.
I do it in a different way, and it has to do with how I see mind and how I see what I am, and how I use naturalism to decide what I am. But that is a long conversation.
Okay.
And basically that's why I am a hard atheist, and I have what I consider reasons for believing that there is no God like that.
Gotcha.
A particular kind of God. But actually I talk about God all the time, and I have faith and I pray, and there are but it's an entirely sort of a Buddhist perspective on that. We'd have to get into it.
Right. No, absolutely. No, I understand.
The thing is, I'm looking for a bridge to you. A bridge. If we go far enough and we abstract far enough, there is a bridge where we connect and we believe pretty much the same thing.
I think so. No, and I think we even kind of showed that in the last conversation where we were discussing the R1, R2, M1, and the potentiality of the near-death experiences, maybe a non-physical consciousness of some sort. No, in fact, I would love to even go down something like that with you at some point. But we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. I'm certainly happy and would be honored to have you back for a third time. No issue at all.
Cool. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, sir. You have yourself a very great day.
Okay, thanks.
Beautiful. All right, folks. Well, hey, I think that was great. Nice, interesting, productive conversations. I love when we do find those occasional, really kind of, do seem to want to at least be open to respectful dialogue type of atheists, because there's a lot of trash out there, and we don't want to do much with the trash other than help expose it to the world. And Speed of Sound, I know he's had some issues with Maddox, but you know what? So far, me and him have just been nice, had nice, respectful dialogue. So I'm just kind of letting him and Maddox do their thing. I'm doing my thing. They both seem to still respect me. So, hey, as far as I'm concerned, it's all savvy. We're gravy here. So, guys, thank you so much for sticking with us. Really appreciate all of you. Appreciate even the activity in the chat and the really kind of interesting, spicy dialogue and challenges and stuff. In fact, I think I might have to watch this again later just for the sake of seeing what Anthony and Immutable were getting into, because it seemed like some interesting stuff. So for sure. Anthony, sir, look forward to our conversation tomorrow morning. I'll see you bright and early for me, but that's okay. We're going to make it look. We're going to make it work. Okay. Thank you so much, folks. Take care. Have a good afternoon. We might do a stream later. So per usual, stay tuned, hit the subscribe, hit the bell, share, all that good stuff. Thank you so much, folks. Take care. Talk to you later.